Two. Hey everyone, what is up? It is Drew from the Drewsperience, and I am back. Just got back from Holland, so I'm still a little jet lagged. But listen, it doesn't matter. When you get an opportunity like this, you take advantage of it. So today's guest is one of the youngest tech wizards of our lifetime. This man is a success story. He's had a TED Talk at like 14, but he's also really knowledgeable on geopolitics, which is why I want to have him on. I'm very passionate about Iran history. My BA's in the Cold War. I'm very proud to welcome one of the biggest advocates for a free, secular, democratized Iran post-Islamic, post-occupying Islamic Republic. Erik Finman, welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you. That's a very nice introduction. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I just got back from, so I'm trying to like get my charisma going, but I'm sure you could tell I have it there. So
You
doing
have
this.
it. Absolutely, you have it. Yeah, no one can tell you're jet lagged at all. And I know what jet lag feels is brutal.
Oh, it is. It is. So, Eric, obviously, you're very known for a lot of things, because when I came across your page and I mentioned, hey, I want to host this Erik Finman character. Everyone said great things about you, like because you're very involved politically. They said Eric is a bright young mind. He's so dynamic. He wants to use technology to help change narratives and also use it for good with politics. So I have to ask, obviously, what was your introduction to history and politics at such a young age?
I mean, yeah, like I've just always been a political junkie for as long as I remember, you know. So some kids had video games, some kids had sports, you know. I had politics, and then, you know, kind of famously that I was kind of you know, so into politics. Bitcoin was actually really big in political, kind of at least niche political circles at the time. So that's how I found about Bitcoin, and that's a little bit my claim to fame and how I made my money in my life. And then yeah, and I've just always been very passionate about politics. And then, you know, I'm a huge fan of Rumi, the poet, and
Oh, we lost you there. I couldn't hear you. Oh,
let's see here. One second.
there we go. I hear
There
you
we go.
now.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Uh, I was a huge fan of Rumi and Rumi's poetry, and that was, I think, my quote unquote gateway drug to kind of you know, Iran and Persian issues. You know, it's been amazing. And then, you know, Cyrus the Great, you know, and the history of him. I mean, it's just been absolutely, you know, there's just all this very rich history, and then it got me thinking about it and researching it more and kind of being into the history of it. And then, you know, I'm a little bit of a, you know, contrarian, although not a contrarian for the sake of being contrarian. But, you know, you see that, you know, kind of there were all these people. And honestly, I just think it's a very loud minority, a very loud minority of people that, you know, did not want to, you know, kind of support, kind of, you know, some intervention to, you know, kind of free the people of Iran, at least within the United States or within kind of Western Europe, etc. And I absolutely do support it because a lot of people think, you know, Iranians are the same as like people in Iraq, like, you know, Arabs. That's not quite true. It's, you know, there's a lot of, you know, Iran is, you know, I think you look it up on Wikipedia, it says like a Caucasian, you know, in the sense like it's a very different genetic group. And I know so many wonderful Arabs, by the way, and all these places that want to see change as well. But, you know, Iran, I think, is more a lot of people, and I think in America, think it's like Iraq. It's not. It's like, it's more like, I think the people are more like Italy, like more Italian, but all obviously different and with their own history. So I think if Italy were under this oppressive, you know, kind of, you know, Sharia law where, you know, a lot of oppression, you know, I would want to see Italy freed, you know, as it once was a long time ago. So so I'm a very big advocate for intervention. I'm in general a very loud person. I'm half Scottish, so in our family, everyone's always yelling. You know, it's very similar, I think, to growing up in a Jewish household. Everyone's, you know, yelling at each other at the dinner table, and that's just how people communicate. So, and I love that. So I just couldn't help it. And then, you know, I'm a right-wing person, and then I saw a lot of people on the right, you know, kind of not a lot, maybe not a lot, but I think a lot of people didn't, you know, were not informed, you know, necessarily on how important I think it was to, and frankly, I think the United States should have gone further in that kind of 12-day war era. I think that Trump could have had a very historical legacy to not just, you know, kind of take out, and delay a lot of the nuclear work that was being done by the Islamic Republic that is very dangerous, you know, for the world. But, you know, I think they could have gone all the way. And, you know, I think some advisors to the president, you know, told them, oh, you know, it's going to turn into Iraq and it's going to be a decade-long thing when it wasn't, and it didn't have to be.
No,
Because
and
I give that opening to the people.
I agree. No, I agree. And it's like, and so take it back. You said you've been always right wing. What was your introduction to conservatism? Because we're seeing this trend now of so many young Americans, Canadians, Europeans going conservative, where before it used to be like left wing or center left, and they're like, ooh, they didn't want to do it. What influenced you to becoming conservative at such a young age?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I also like I want to steal the word progressive from the left because I think the left does not believe in progress and conservative can just mean Republican and I'm
Hmm.
very Republican. I'm a very right wing. Conservative can just mean right wing, but I don't have like a, what you think of as like I have a Republican right wing personality. I do not have like I do not live my life conservatively
Yeah,
in
same.
the sense where I love taking risks. I love progress and everything. And so I actually I don't love that word, although people use it totally just to mean right wing. So, but yeah, there is this global movement of people wanting change and people wanting big action to make a difference. And ultimately, I think being right wing is believing in free speech and allowing you to be yourself. So to me, I think I think we all have unique personalities. I think I have a unique personality, and I want to be unapologetically myself. And when I go to left wing environments, I feel very constricted. And then the left has this culture of banning people and banning, and the Islamic Republic has this culture of banning, people that they don't like. So I believe in the ability to be yourself. I think young people around the world, especially with internet and social media, believe in the ability of being themselves. And that's what made me right wing, I think, ever for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, you know what's amazing? When I came across your page, I just want to say, guys, please follow Erik Finman on Instagram and X, especially his Instagram page. He's got some great history reels. Your Operation Desert Storm reel, I think I've watched 1,000 times.
Thank you.
And it's
Thank
like
you.
it's my favorite one of my favorite reels of yours because it's like, I remember when I went to San Diego in Coronado, the base for
Oh, so beautiful.
it's amazing. I love California. Like because my dad's family, my father, who was Iranian, late father, his family lives spread across. And when I went into the aircraft carrier, it's like, for us, it's like that's like Call of Duty 4 when you watch like from like the from the F-15s or the bombers when they're doing the
Mm.
raids. And for it's like that was considered the first modern war, and it's like showing that to kids today. It's like, oh, this is what I see in COD. Imagine back then. So you did great. Like you did really good making that real to showcasing like actual history.
Absolutely. No, no. And San Diego is amazing and the aircraft carrier there is amazing. I've been there too. It's amazing history. And it comes from a history that, of the right ultimately doing things and because Kuwait, it was a blend of two great things. It was, making sure that Kuwait had the right of self-determination to be itself, but also this was an ally and we were doing all this trade with Kuwait. So the United States had a lot of money to was making a lot of money and Kuwait was making a lot of money from trading. So if Saddam Hussein wanted to take Kuwait's agency, that also takes a trading partner away from the United States. And that's what I try to, make clear to, at least people in America and people in the West, like Iran being so under oppressive Islamic rule, it hurts America in the sense that we lose access to all this great trading partner who has Iran has a lot of oil that we can trade and you know buy and make Iran very rich and then all these rare earth metals, also great tourism, and Iran's such beautiful geography in Iran. People think Iran is like all desert. It's not. You have
No.
tropical areas, you got skiing areas. It's amazing. And so I try to make that clear to people here. But I think the right, because George W. Bush, for better or for worse, did all he did, and then he was kind of crucified for that politically. And so that kind of ruined, I think, the ability to go and do things internationally that are in everyone's interests to do. And because they think it's going to end up in a 10-year conflict, and we're going to get, spend $10 trillion and get nothing for it. But that doesn't have to be the case. And ultimately, in my opinion, the reason, Bush did not act I think, enough. And, there's a lot of one of my favorite military strategists, Edward Lotwak, said that very well, that he was brought in initially to advise on, kind of this, the organization of how to, build Iraq so the people have a say and it's a functioning place. And then he said it was just filled with people that were very left wing and, wanted, for example, they mandated it. So 1/3 of the parliament that they were working to create had to be all women. And not even at that time, not even 1/3 of the US Congress was women. Not even 1/3 of the UK Parliament was women. And then in that area, women were not seen as people who could be political figures. So you're trying to speed run and mandate and force things that were not going to happen naturally, right? In a democratic environment, you want people to, if people want to vote for a woman or a man or whoever, then they should vote for that, but not have it be forced. And then the Bush administration, kind of really messed that up and how they were creating that. And there was like a million other things like that, like not just women, whatever, just a million other kind of unforced errors that made it turn into this extended multi-trillion-dollar thing when it doesn't have to be that. So, but unfortunately, that made it just so any involvement doing anything good that is in America's interests is in that country's interests. It just made it impossible to convince people. So I try to convert people. And I have, by the way, I would say when I was the only person that was like American right wing that had like a voice to advocate for this. And when I started, I was the only one advocating for this. And I would say, and I take this, like I convinced, I'd say about 60% of the right-wing influencers to do something via texting, via me posting, and then people, sometimes it's a little shallow in the sense these influencers just like to support what's popular. Unfortunately, I care what's right. I don't care what's popular, but they saw how what I was doing, how popular it actually was. And then thus they hopped on the bandwagon. So some I convinced through good arguments, and some, fortunately or unfortunately, were convinced just because what I was doing was actually popular. They thought they'd get beat up for it if they support it. And I was the one, and by the way, I did get beat up a little bit for it, but it was
Really?
way more popularity for supporting helping the Iranian people and how that's also helping American people as well. And then it ended up, I'd say I got 60%. I'd say if I never, and again, I say this like not in an arrogant way, if I didn't post what I post, if I didn't convince, I'd say 60% of like MAGA right-wing influencers, we would have never done the Iran involvement that we did. We wouldn't have even taken out, and delayed their nuclear program in a huge way. Because Trump really cares what is said by these influencers and has said what's on Twitter.
Hmm.
And these influencers themselves, they credit me for that. People in the White House that were against this, by the way, I have some friends in the White House that support this. You support what I'm talking about, support what we're talking about. I have some my friends at the White House where they said "fuck you, Eric." Literally, the White House, because of all your tweets, because of all the views. And by the way, it's not just my posts; it's all these people like liking the whole community, like yourself, liking.
Guilty.
Doing
Y-
no, for real, for real. Like if I got zero likes and zero views and all this, right? It wouldn't matter. So it's the
No.
community showing it. But I have friends at the White House. One, about three friends at the White House, two of which, were like, ah, Eric. But one literally was like, because of what you did, we bombed Iran, and he was very against it and everything. So he stopped talking to me after that. So it was just crazy because he was so angry that I was able to do what I did, and then also convince about 60% of right-wing influencers to at least bomb the nuclear program, and I wish more. But yeah. So I actually I lost one friend from that, and then because
Same.
he just said like yeah. So but it was worth it because it's
Yeah.
right. It's right.
Yeah, like I mean, for example, I mean, like for me, when it comes to my story with being Iranian, so my father was born in Tehran. He was born in Mahmoudiyeh, which is a beautiful area in Tehran. He's Assyrian Iranian. By the way,
Mhm.
we do not claim Patrick Bet David. That's a bad joke I like to make. But my dad, but he came to Canada when he was like 10 years old. The family went to the US because they were studying abroad. Long story short, my great grandfather was taken hostage by the mullahs when the revolution happened because they had the records of like who was a Shah supporter, who had assets. He owned a trucking company that was very successful. They said we want the assets because we needed to help like fulfill this revolution and start something new. And my great grandfather, to his credit, like just kept saying, I'm a simple pensioner. I'm just here because of my country. Whatever change happens, I just want to be left alone. Then, thanks to my dad's family. They had some connections, obviously, to help get him out. And luckily, he passed away in the US. But the
Mm,
PTSD and the psychological trauma that this occupying night that this occupying nightmare of a regime has caused is like endless. You hear how people don't want to say they're Iranian. Like my dad was one of them. He did not teach me Farsi. He did not want me to talk about being Iranian until
mm,
close to him passing away.
mm,
And I became passionate about the Shah when my grandmother started mentioning what it meant to be Iranian. And then I got to ask this: how did you find what you said Rumi and then Cyrus. When you learned about the Shah, what captured your mind? Like where you said, wow, like we have it wrong about this guy. Despite some of his mistakes, there's no such thing as a perfect leader.
mm. Yeah, no, I mean, definitely, yeah. Rumi was the gateway drug to, I'd say, just Iran in general, Persia in general. And then yeah, I started researching about the Shah, and I'm someone who believes in having a big imagination,
Mhm.
and the Shah, I think, had a huge, huge, huge imagination. And I think we've lost that term, at least I think everywhere where people talk about, when they're raising kids, we want have a big imagination, have an unfiltered imagination. And I think the Shah is one of the few world leaders in history, period, that had like a big imagination. And I wish we had more imagination in the
Same.
US, Walt Disney, he talked about, like, the man himself talked about Imagineering, new ideas, Imagineering, imagination and engineering, kind of, great things. And I think he Imagineered just a lot of incredible he did a lot of incredible things. So, and I think he put, and reminded, I think particularly in his era, the history of Persia and the history of that country, to the Western world. And I think if, the US had backed him up, it just would have been an entirely different place in the Middle East. I think Iran would have been, you know, just the not even the Western world, but just the good people of the world's greatest ally. And it's so heartbreaking to see that it went away. So I don't know. I was just encaptured by his imagination. And yeah, no perfect person, definitely, but he thought big and he went big. And I want leaders that enter government to go big, because I don't think being a world leader means you go do the small things. You should care about the small things and do those too, but it's about doing the big things. And I think even in
Mhm.
the United States, we've lost that desire of a lot of presidents in the past, 40 years have done some big things, but they've forgotten that you're there to do the big things.
That's very true. I love exactly what you said. And you were very spoken at the Massa Amini protest, like in one of your reels too. Like you really became passionate about it. It became I honestly think like, there's not many celebrities or like people that we see stand up for Iranians. And I don't say this like in a disrespectful way. I really believe the Iranian people are the real underdogs because they don't get the world helping them. They're always shut down. They're always clamped down. And then we have people like you and maybe like a few others that say no, this government, these occupiers of the mullahs and the ayatollah have to go if we really want to see true prosperity in the world. And what was it like when you met some of the people of, say, the Massa advocacy group, the Massa army, or there's a new one called Nufti, if I'm not mistaken? I suck with the acronyms.
That's all right, me too. So, no, I mean, it was amazing. It was, I brought my friend to, kind of video some of it.
Mhm.
And then, they had no kind of pre knowledge. I just said, but trust me, it's going to be great. And you're going to meet the people there, that really care. You'll see these are like really, really good people. And you're like, oh, okay. And then after that, oh, is my video working? Did it cut out for a second?
Yeah,
There
it's
we go.
working now.
I'm
Yeah,
back. I'm
but
back.
we got great flow though. I love it. The chemistry is great.
Perfect. Absolutely. So yeah. And then, after I gave that speech, it was like a 10-minute speech, and then after that, I think I spent 2 hours there just talking to people and everything. And then, my friend was like, wow, it's really beautiful. Like, if Iranians got 10% of the support, Palestinians get from people in the West, literally, it would be over for the Ayatollah, and it'd be over for the occupying regime of Iran and everything, because it's a very high IQ population in Iran. It's a very smart, good population, in Iran that just, yeah, if it had a little bit more help, then it could really, I think Iran would be a superpower if it was allowed to, if you didn't have this occupying government. I mean, there's a quote that always stuck with me, and I heard it when I was like, I think 8 years old, and he said, "Look at North Korea and South Korea. It's the exact same people with the exact same land, and the only difference is government." And then you see the difference between North Korea and the difference between how great South Korea is doing. And then I think it would be an even bigger difference if Iran just had a government that allowed its people to thrive, and everything. And then it's so sad that every day, like we lose on the world economy, that so many smart Iranians are not allowed to just be themselves. And how much does that lack? We could have gone so much farther in cancer research, so much farther in space travel if we just had a smart population that wasn't oppressed. And I think that's applicable to many countries, but especially Iran. Like I care, I think human capital is one of the most important things. Same with North Korea. There's a lot of smart people that are oppressed in North Korea. And why, how much loss to humanity and loss to the human project, of advancement do we lose out on because smart people are not allowed to be and implement smart things.
So true. I love what you said because when I'm in the spaces, we discuss this like of how well Iranians integrate when they immigrate. Like so, one of now I could
I'm
say
in
my
Orange County right now. It's proof.
yeah,
I'm in Orange County right now. So
exactly. Like I mean, one of my friends. I mean, he's that I met that's Iranian. I'll tell you his name off the record right after this. Like he came. His family fled during the Iran-Iraq war towards the end. They went to Europe. They migrated successfully and they became contributing members of the country they live in. And it's like, and you just see like how they bring their skills. They don't want to like force anything. They want to help contribute and build. And yeah, human capital like in that regard is so important.
I agree. I agree. I mean, I think that I believe in, I believe in places just becoming better for
Mhm.
themselves so people don't even feel the need or I want people to immigrate here voluntarily, not because their country is so in a bad spot. But the immigrants that come from Iran, I mean, again, I'm in Orange County, California right now today, and this is one of the meccas for Persians to come to. And one of my best friends married a wonderful Persian woman and everything, and she speaks Farsi and teaches. They have kids together. She teaches them Farsi and everything,
Good.
and talks about the rich heritage that they have, and that's probably one of the other kind of entry points I found into kind of getting into Iranian culture in the first place and Iranian history. So it is so true because it is one of the best groups of people you could ever bring to a country, I think, period. And I have like I don't see, kind of a street drug addict, living on the street 24/7, peop Iranians in Orange County. You just don't see it. Like it's laughable to think about. You don't see them in Paris, kind of dealing drugs on the street. It's just laughable to think about because they do come here and they do contribute and they do so well.
Very true. What does let's say the 12-day war had succeeded. They
Hmm.
were able to, end, however you want to put it, the Ayatollahs, the mullahs, like tell Pezeshkian, hey, either you leave the country and go in exile, or you're going to be part of the casualties of and the consequences. How do you think what would have happened if it succeeded? Like what could you foresee happening for Iran? I mean, if we put like our we are political junkies, but what would you, if you could really put your thinking cap on, what would you think a free Iran 2.0 would look like?
I mean, it'd be a whole new country, it'd be a whole new world, and then, the ability for Trump to go and do that. I mean, by the way, I think Marco Rubio, if he became president, would do that. I
Hmm.
think he'll go all the way, with it. And I think there was an opportunity here where Iran was, I think the just, kind of globally shunned for what they were doing, where you had kind of the political window to do it. If you only care if you care about, sometimes it's not always, unfortunately, about what's right. I think it's just about what's right, but sometimes there is a political window where something's popular to do, and that does factor into a world leader's decision making. And there was that window, and they didn't do it. And I think Trump could have made history if he did it. But no, it would have been a whole new world. I mean, it's I mean, you would have had access to human capital. I mean, you would have had, I think, like $100 billion investment into Iran like tomorrow if the Ayatollahs were gone today. So, it would just be so beautiful. It'd be one of the, Dubai is nice, but I think Iran would be so much better as like a tourist destination. Like there'd be so much tourist dollars, there'd be so much investment into that place, there would be so much trade deals done. That's what I'm saying. Like for America, it's in American people's interest to have access to buy and sell, and Iranian people's interest to have access to buy and sell from, the Western market. And like, it would be like a little, Tehran could turn into, I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but if Tehran wanted, it could turn into a little mini Monaco, or even actually not a mini Monaco,
A
could turn into a
massive
little
Monaco.
a massive Monaco for
Yeah.
how much I think Iran has like the second biggest oil supply in the world, I think behind Venezuela, if I'm correct on that. And it's not like, the US, people say, oh, the US, goes, it's like, no, we buy it, so it's like you would just make so much more money because the US has so much more money. It is the number one market in the world. So having access to the EU and the United States markets, it just like people just become so rich in Iran. Like that's kind of my form of diplomacy, is in the sense like if you do this, you'd be so rich. Like it would be so insane how rich you would be in Iran. Like the average person in Iran would be so rich. And then, gas prices in the United States would like go down to like back to reasonable rates for the first time,
90s, like if we're back to the 90s level.
back to 90s level. And that's the thing but that's the thing is like by the way, I don't even think Trump's been told that, by the way. Like if you go and do this and you just kind of allow the Iranian people to rise, and thrive, and help them in that way with just a very small military action, which less than like the United States invaded Panama, like it's for that was an invasion and we were in and out very quickly, and everything, just because the Panama Canal was seized and that was a valuable trade route and everything. And I think Panama is like far better for it. And by the way, the population of Panama I think is great, but I think the population of Iran is just incredibly smart and is held back even more.
Mhm.
So it's just like it just would be so rich, and then gas prices would go down to 90s level in the United States. And by the way, I don't think anyone's told Trump that.
No.
So it's I think, and that's the thing is when I say this, I'm telling people this for the first time, and everything. And by the way, I love Marco Rubio, but I think Rubio doesn't even. I think a lot of the traditional Republicans who supporting like pre-Trump Republicans that exist on the scene support freeing the Iranian people, but they don't. This was the problem of pre-Trump Republicans, is they don't know how to phrase things for honestly for how it helps domestic Americans, and everything. And then unfortunately the word freedom and the word democracy has been devalued,
Mhm.
and everything. Like those are really important words, but just saying, oh well, it's good for freedom, that is great, that is true, but it lacks the, people kind of write that off because it's just been used, unfortunately, for cynical political purposes for so long. It's like, no, like they'll be so rich and we'll save so much money, and it's just like a million win-wins, in so many ways, and everything. But so I don't think these conversations are even going on in the White House, unfortunately. That's what I've sought out to do, is to articulate those, I think, in a way to make it clear that, hey, this I'm all about win-wins. I started out as a libertarian. I believe in win-wins, win deals and transactions and involvement and partnership. Yeah,
Oh, cut out there a little bit. I believe
like
in, no, it's okay. Don't
would
worry.
be
It
just
happened.
the win-win of the last 1,000 years.
Very true.
There we
There
go.
you
You're
go.
back. You're back.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Eric, I got to ask because obviously we only have 30 minutes. You're a very busy guy, and I get it. I'm going to end it on this. Do you believe when the Ayatollahs fall, it's a matter of when, it's not a matter of if. We've seen it's a matter of
I
when now.
agree.
How do you see the people of Iran rising up with His Royal Highness the Shah, the son Reza? How do you believe he's the crown prince? I should say crown prince. I gotta be careful. Crown prince or the Shah, the new Shah. How do you see Iran rebounding like a phoenix for
I
on
would
this?
personally, yeah, I mean, there'll be a certain point. It's inevitable, that the Iranian people will kind of have that window to rise up, and tear down this very oppressive regime. And I think probably the realistic case scenario is that the crown prince will be kind of running to just kind of put in there by the Iranian people to run kind of a temporary government for 100 days, and
Hmm.
then elections will be called. And then, he can run in that election. And then maybe the people that rise up will choose to vote for him, and then they'll have an election every so many years, right?
Amazing.
So I think that's the realistic thing that's going to happen. I actually support monarchy, so I actually think that it would be great if he just ran things for the rest of his life, and it kind of had a similar kind of chain of command as the Shah, the original Shah. So I kind of prefer that. I think monarchy is a very good thing. I think it actually can provide stability for a place. Unfortunately, I don't think that's how it's going to go. But I think the realistic scenario is amazing too.
I'm
I think it's absolutely amazing. I think he'll be in there running a temporary transitional government for 100 days after a revolution, a new revolution, a revolution of like the true interests of the Iranian people. And then he'll go run in that election and we'll see how that turns out for him. And I think he'll win. So that's also a great outcome too.
Amazing. You just won yourself so many followers on like X and Instagram from the Iranians, like myself. Well, I mean, I've always supported you. Eric, where can people find you if they want to connect and see your work? Because you're back on Instagram after a hiatus and you're posting again, but you're active on X more. Where can people find you if they want to really like connect and guy and for Goldie and Johnny, if we ever do an Iran space, please bring in Eric. Like I will contact him myself for you. Let's make it happen. So where can they connect with you?
That's very nice. That's very nice. Yeah, I'm at just my first and last name and everything at Erik Finman at ErikFinman. So that's just where I am on all things social media.
Amazing. And guys, if you like these conversations, make sure to hit the like, share, subscribe to the Drewsperience on YouTube. It takes 2 seconds. Follow me on Instagram. I do karate content. I do politics now with Canada, and Iran history, and also sometimes anime. But make sure to follow Eric too. He's the reason why I do the shows like this. Eric, I really want to thank you for coming on, man. It feels like I have a friend now, and we're gonna continue supporting you. And God willing, Iran will be free. It's not a matter of if; it's a matter of when.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Drew. Everyone subscribe to Drew.
Thank you.